Steve.
Joining us now, Robert Dozier, Executive Director of Mississippi Independent Pharmacies Association. Thanks for coming in, Robert.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So a couple of weeks ago, wasn't too long ago, the state auditor, I guess it was just this week, actually, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, sir. It was earlier this week.
He released a report, the state auditor, Shad White, just addressing the situation with pharmacy benefit managers, and that, of course, is in the wake of recovering $55 million with respect to the operation of a pharmacy, a PBM, as it relates to Medicaid. And so I'm going to start by just asking you to give a high-level overview of exactly what a pharmacy benefit manager is. I've read lots of stuff about that in the past. It is one of the most misunderstood, perhaps, and complicated aspects of health care insurance and health care delivery, especially as it relates to pharmaceuticals and medicine.
It is very correct. It is complex. It is confusing. These guys hide kind of back behind the curtain, like the Wizard of Oz, so to speak. And a lot of people don't really truly understand how large of corporations these guys are. I mean, I looked at some of the figures earlier this morning. You have United Healthcare and CVS Caremark. They're in the top 10 of the largest companies in the United States, maybe the world, right here. So they're up there with Exxon, Walmart, Amazon, companies of that nature, and you very rarely hear about them. PBMs started off basically being a third-party administrator handling processing of pharmacy claims for insurance companies and everything. And then over the past, say, 30 years, they have grown into these major corporations that basically control the prescription drug market, prescription drug supply chain by vertical integration. And what I mean by the vertical integration is they are kind of the insurance company. They have their own mail order pharmacies. They have their own specialty pharmacies, and then they have their own retail chain pharmacies. So you take CVS Caremark, for example. They have retail pharmacies all across the country, and they also own their own PBM. So the independent pharmacy that is out there, he's having to go head-to-head in competition with CVS retail pharmacy, but he's also being dictated by Caremark, the PBM, which is owned by CVS, on the reimbursement and the other things as well as such too. So it's kind of like in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of like McDonald's telling Burger King how much to charge for the Whopper.
Yeah.
And these guys are basically squeezing the independent pharmacists out of business. But it's just not about the independent pharmacists out there as well either. It's also about the payers, the employer groups. And most importantly, it's about the patients. And that's the thing that really people don't know a lot about. So you and I were talking off air a while ago, and you had told me at one time your company had 330 employees.
Right.
And when you started off, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi was the insurance company you used, and then you eventually moved over to United Healthcare.
Right.
Well, United Healthcare, they own their own PBM as well, too. It's called OptumRx. And so what happens is they're out there, the PBMs are always telling people, we're reducing prescription drug costs. We're reducing prescription drug costs. Well, when's the last time you saw prescription drug costs go down? If you go back all the way to George Bush, 41, and every president that we've had since then, Republican and Democrat, they've all wanted to reduce the high cost of prescription drugs. And they all want to start with the drug companies. Well, let me tell you this. I feel sorry for the drug companies right now for a little bit. Because the pharmacy benefit managers, they basically force the drug companies to pay them rebate money so that the pharmacy benefit managers can put that drug on the formulary. So when the pharmacy benefit manager is in control of the drug formulary or the preferred drug list, what drug is going to be covered under that prescription drug plan, the brand name drug manufacturer is basically forced to pay this money in a form of a rebate. So that is one aspect of revenue that comes back to the PBM, whereas that rebate should be helping reduce the overall cost, but it does not. It does not go to the patient. It does not go back to the payer, like in your case, your company, who's kind of helping pay the bill. It goes to the middleman, who is doing nothing but processing claims. At least the drug manufacturer is producing a product out there.
But the intent of it is, in fact, to lower cost and pass those on.
Well, defined intent. And that's the thing. So, okay, you take this right here. You have this rebate money that the drug manufacturer has to pay. Well, once that drug is on that formulary or that preferred drug list, always remember the patient has to pay a copay in the pharmacy. Well, is that patient paying the list price of the drug or the price after the rebate? Well, we know that it's not the price after the rebate. It's always the list price. So they're gigging the patient right there and such. And so you have this vertical integration. Spread pricing is another aspect. I'll use you as an example again. Your employee goes to a pharmacy. It could be a retail pharmacy. It could be an independent pharmacy. They go in there. The PBM is the one who sets the reimbursement for that prescription, for that pharmacy. Well, the PBM pays the pharmacy. Then you, the employer, you pay the PBM. There's going to be a difference right there. The PBM is going to receive a higher reimbursement from the employer, and then they're passing on a lower reimbursement to the pharmacy. It's called spread pricing right there.
So fair to say the PBMs sit between the pharmacy and the drug makers, but are associated with or sometimes owned by the insurers, the carriers.
Well, the PBM kind of sits in the middle of everybody.
Okay.
So you have the payer out there, like this employer group. Then you have the drug manufacturers out there that they have a relationship with. Then you have the pharmacy they have a relationship with. And then you have the patient out there. So they're just kind of sitting in the middle of all of this right here because they go to the employer group, they get access to these lives. And then when they have access to these lives, they then go to the drug manufacturer and say, okay, well, we've got access to these 1,000 lives from either this company or state or local municipality, and so start paying the rebate money because you have to pay the rebate money to get your drug on the formulary.
That makes sense.
Then they go to the pharmacy, they throw a contract down and say it's a take it or leave it contract. Well, the pharmacy has no negotiating ability, none whatsoever. And a lot of times these pharmacies are being reimbursed below their cost. And so they're sitting here having to explain to Miss Smith why her copay is going up every other month. The pharmacies have nothing to do with that. I give you something to think about right here. Our association had to pass a piece of legislation here in Jackson a few years ago to allow pharmacies to be able to tell the patients that the cash price, the pharmacy's cash price, was cheaper than the patient's copay. To think about that.
That's crazy.
There was a gag clause rule in these PBM contracts with the pharmacies, and the pharmacists they would fill the prescription, they would see what the copay was, say the copay might be $50. Well, they would look at it and they would say, well, wait a minute, Miss Jones' copay is $50, but my cash price is $25. But they couldn't say anything because of this gag clause right here. So we had to go over there and pass a piece of legislation. Well, who does that really help? It helps the patient more than anybody.
Crazy. That's just crazy. Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming in, Robert, and breaking that down for us. But it sounds like the main thing is, before we go, this is hurting your members because of all these provisions.
It's not only is it hurting my members that I represent, it's hurting a lot of other pharmacies across the country. It's hurting the employer groups and the self-insured plans here in the state of Mississippi. Very possible, maybe state government and also municipalities, and it's hurting the patients. A great deal.
Keep working on it.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Robert Dozier, Executive Director, Mississippi Independent Pharmacies Association, has been our guest on Middays. We'll come right back. Stay with us.